that the administration is now working for Mossad and covering up a child sex ring. So he can say that, that's fine. But I think he should then have the balls to say what Dave Smith said, which is that the Trump administration was covering for a child sex ring that was a blackmail scheme run by Mossad.
Epstein, quote, belonged to intelligence, end quote, and that he'd been ordered to, quote, leave it alone, end quote, and that he'd, quote, been told to back off. Epstein wasn't an agent, but was like an asset. I think he is former in Israeli intel.
He was rich, mysterious, and had friends in the highest places from presidents to royalty. But behind closed doors, Jeffrey Epstein was running something far darker than a lavish lifestyle. And when the story finally broke, it wasn't just about underage girls or secret islands. It was about intelligence agencies, political protection, and a possible blackmail operation that could shake entire governments. The real explosion happened when two big names, Ben Shapiro and Megyn Kelly, went head-to-head in a heated debate. They weren't arguing over simple theories. They were arguing over whether Jeffrey Epstein was a foreign intelligence asset, someone protected by powerful global forces.
The law enforcement, let's say, I'll just go that far, who say, not only do we believe he was an agent, but we don't believe he killed himself.
I mean, that's fine. And then they should come out and they should say that. And then they should say who's covering that up.
Okay, but this is what, Ben, they can't. I mean, there are a lot of people who say they can't, right? They can't because let's look at what the administration is saying right now. They don't want to be the one to cross Trump.
Maybe even Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency. Ben was firm. There's no hard proof. No agency came forward, no whistleblower with receipts. But Megyn pushed back. She had unnamed high-level law enforcement sources telling her straight up, Epstein didn't kill himself. And yes, he was connected to intelligence. That's not something you hear every day from major media figures. This wasn't a debate between random people online. This was two seasoned professionals clashing over one of the most controversial cases of the last decade. And the fact that names like Mossad, blackmail operations, and government cover-ups were thrown around so casually? That's when you know this story goes way deeper than most think.
Look, Megyn, my position is, like, show us all the evidence so we can come to our own conclusions.
I have names of the people. So I agree with you. That's fine. But in the absence of that, I have the names of the people who are making the claim that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, and that the most gross, and sort of extreme of the conspiracy theories, just don't even call them conspiracy theories, the most sort of, extreme version of the theory is not true. I have names of the people who are claiming that. Okay, they are all in the administration. And this is my point. If other people want to make those claims that are counter to that, then they should provide evidence or at least put their names on it so we can question them about that as well, because otherwise we're just in the realm of pure speculation.
By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now let's continue. Ben Shapiro came into that conversation armed with names, real ones. Not whispers in the dark, but public figures who had gone on record. He listed them like a roll call: the President of the United States, the Vice President, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi, and senior members of the FBI. All of them, according to Ben, believed the official story that Epstein died by suicide and that there was no intelligence operation involved. He leaned on that authority like a shield. These are credible people, he argued. They've said it publicly. What more do you need?
And frankly, I just don't find that useful. I would love more useful information. This is why I'm angry at Pam Bondi. I think there should be all the useful information possible. But the same thing holds true for people who are making claims on the other side. Otherwise, I can claim that he was working for a cadre of space aliens who are blackmailing high-profile Americans in order to protect from a future invasion. And there's just about as much evidence for that as many of the claims that are being made on the other side.
All right, well, let's talk about that.
That is made requires evidence. Any claim that's being made requires actual evidence. And at the very least, in the absence of evidence, the credible names of the people that I can either trust or not trust, ranging from, again, the President of the United States and Vice President to the head of the FBI, the AG, and the deputy head of the FBI.
Well, I think it's very hard to say those people need to come out and put their names on these claims when they're working for an administration, this one and the one before, that didn't want that to come out. You're asking somebody to countermand the people they work for.
How am I supposed to falsify their claims? Now we're working in the realm of the unfalsifiable.
You're not, but look, Ben, you can't come to me and say, everybody I know says he killed himself. And then I respond saying, I actually have my own sources who say he didn't. And then you say, well, your sources are not valid because they won't put their names on it. Okay,
Well,
who are
no,
your
I'm not saying
sources?
they're
Let's go
invalid. I'm
down the
saying they
list,
should-
and then we'll talk about why they might be saying that.
But Megyn wasn't backing down. She didn't have a tidy list of government officials. What she had were unnamed insiders people she claims are deep in law enforcement, people close to the investigations. And they were saying something very different, that Epstein was protected, possibly even used, by intelligence agencies. That he didn't just slip through the crack, she was untouchable by design. Now here's where it got tense. Ben demanded names. He wanted sources out in the open. Otherwise, he said, we're just dealing in rumors. But Megyn pushed back hard. She argued that expecting whistleblowers to expose themselves, especially when powerful forces are involved, is naive at best and dangerous at worst. You don't just go public against the people who run the system. This wasn't just a disagreement. This was two completely different versions of reality clashing, and neither side was willing to budge.
Okay, Trump hasn't specifically weighed in on that specific aspect of it. We've all seen the limited things that Trump has said and tweeted on this. And J.D. Vance was calling for transparency and suggesting otherwise prior to taking office. He hasn't commented on this so far, so he's not one of your sources.
He's the vice
you've
president.
got Cash, you've got
ask.
Dan, and you've got Pam, and we've already discussed that memo in full detail. I'm talking about people behind the scenes who, prior to Trump taking office, I'm not going to get too specific, but trust me, I have high-level sources who have said they don't believe any of that. Any of that.
Okay.
So, and I'm not going to out them for purposes of convincing you, but you're telling me name them. No, I'm not going to. I don't have authorization.
I'm not saying
and then
no.
you say, well, I
Megyn,
dismiss all of it because you won't name them.
Hold on, Megyn, I'm not saying you should name them. I'm saying they should name themselves because otherwise they are being complicit in one of the greatest cover-ups in the history of the American
That's easy for you to say, Ben. That's easy. That's very easy for you to say.
Why is that easy for me to say? Why?
Because you'll have your job and you'll have your millions, no matter what they do.
Are you kidding? Megyn, give me a break. If somebody came out today and they were a whistleblower on the greatest scandal in the history of the American Republic, they would make more money tomorrow than in their entire life working for the FBI.
Ben wasn't letting it slide. He doubled down, saying that unless these so-called insiders come forward and put their names on their claims, it's all just speculation. Otherwise, he said, you could just say Epstein was working for space aliens and there'd be just as much proof. He mocked the idea that anything outside the official narrative could be trusted without hard evidence or real people willing to take the heat. But Megyn wasn't having it. She fired back with something that hit deeper. Not everyone has the luxury to speak out. People inside these systems, especially intelligence and law enforcement, risk everything by crossing the people in charge. It's easy for you to say, she snapped at Ben. You'll have your job and your millions no matter what. Her point was clear. Being a whistleblower on a scandal this big could destroy someone's career, maybe even their life. Ben tried to turn it around. He argued that if someone came forward with proof of the greatest cover-up in American history, they wouldn't be destroyed, they'd be famous, rich, protected. But Megyn didn't buy it. She said these people stay quiet for a reason. It's not about money, it's about fear. Fear of the system, of being silenced, of losing everything. So now we've got two sides staring each other down. One side demands transparency and names. The other says the truth is being buried because speaking it out loud could ruin lives. And this is just the beginning.
And or why, to this day, people aren't that interested in digging deep under the Jeffrey Epstein story. So there's a lot of speculation about this. You mentioned Tucker. I'll just play what he said at Turning Point, and we can take it from there.
What the hell is this? You have the former Israeli prime minister living in your house. You have had all this contact with the foreign government. Were you working on behalf of Mossad? Were you running a blackmail operation on behalf of foreign government?
And there's another one, SOT 3. Play that, follow up.
And I think the truth, for whatever it's worth, in case you're interested, is that the DOJ didn't release lots of incriminating sex videos with Epstein and his billionaire pals because they don't have them. They don't have them because when the original search warrant was served 2007, I think, it was basically designed to protect Epstein.
Now here's where the cracks in the official story really start to show. Ben Shapiro stuck closely to what people like Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam Bondi have said, basically that Epstein took his own life, and there's no secret black book or hidden client list. Nothing to see beyond what we already know. From Ben's point of view, it's not crazy to trust the administration you support, especially when there's no solid proof pointing in the opposite direction. But the thing is, there is something off. A lot of things, actually. The video's host made it clear, I don't take any administration's word at face value. And that's where a huge chunk of the public is right now skeptical, alert, and digging. Because while Ben and others may accept the narrative, too many details don't add up. Why would someone with Epstein's connections and money get such a lenient deal back in 2008? Why were his finances so murky? Why did so many influential names float around him without a single one really being held accountable? That's why this debate matters. Because if you take everything at face value, you miss what could be the biggest story of the decade. And if you dig deeper, you realize we've barely scratched the surface. Something was shielding Epstein. The question is what? Or even scarier, who? Let's rewind for a moment to something easy to miss, but absolutely explosive Tucker Carlson's comments at Turning Point. He stood in front of a cheering crowd and didn't hold back. He straight up asked the question that no one in power seems willing to answer. Was Jeffrey Epstein working for Mossad? Not in a joking way. Not in a maybe this is crazy way. He laid it out. Epstein had the former Israeli prime minister living in his home. He had money coming from strange places. And, according to Tucker, the DOJ didn't release any incriminating sex tapes because they never had them in the first place. Why? Because the original search warrant was designed to protect Epstein, not to take him down. Then came the bigger question. Who was Epstein doing all this for? Who was behind the curtain? Where was the money coming from? And why did it seem like no one in the federal government really wanted to find out? Tucker's answer was clear. Epstein was working on behalf of foreign intelligence, and not the American kind. He made it very clear that we've been too afraid to say out loud what many people are thinking, that Israel's intelligence agency, Mossad, may have been involved. And the crowd? They didn't hesitate. They cheered. Loudly. Because millions of people are connecting the dots. And they know that when someone like Epstein has that much power and protection, it's not just about trafficking or money, it's about control. Now let's get into the part that made jaws drop Megyn Kelly, laying out why so many people believe Epstein was working for Mossad. She didn't just float the idea. She walked through real claims, real quotes, and real moments that suggest something much darker was going on behind the scenes. She brought up a bombshell report involving Alex Acosta, the guy who gave Epstein that shocking plea deal back in 2008. According to journalist Vicky Ward, when Acosta was being considered for a role in the Trump administration, the transition team asked him about Epstein. Was his connection to that case going to be a problem? Acosta allegedly responded that Epstein belonged to intelligence and that he was told to leave it alone and back off. That's not rumor. That's a direct quote that's never been publicly denied in a strong way. Yes, when Acosta was questioned about it later, he gave a textbook non-answer, saying there were lots of reports and that people shouldn't believe everything they read. But he never truly denied saying those words. Not then, not later. Even worse, when the Department of Justice investigated, they asked Acosta again. This time, behind closed doors, he supposedly denied it. But let's be real, that's the DOJ asking itself whether it covered up one of the biggest scandals in American history. It's like asking the fox if he ate the chickens. Of course, he'll say no, but the feathers on the floor tell a different story. And here's where it gets even more suspicious. If Epstein really was just some shady billionaire acting alone, why were there so many little details that scream intelligence ops? First off, the money. No one has ever clearly explained where all his wealth came from. He wasn't running a real hedge fund. There were no clients listed. Yet somehow, Epstein was raking in tens of millions of dollars. One example? Leon Black, a billionaire with ties to Epstein, reportedly gave him over $160 million for financial services. What kind of services? No one can say. There's no paperwork, no trail. Just vague explanations and a lot of silence. Then there's Jane Doeoni of Epstein's alleged victims, who said Epstein claimed to be connected to Mossad, and not like a casual name drop. He used it as a threat to scare her into silence. That's not something you make up in the middle of being trafficked. And it doesn't stop there. Ari Ben-Menashe, a former Mossad-linked operative, publicly said Epstein was running classic honey traps, the kind intelligence agencies use to blackmail powerful people. Journalist Dylan Howard backed this up, saying their research pointed in the same direction. So now we have victims, insiders, and researchers all pointing toward the same conclusion. And yet, no official investigation seems to touch it. It's like there's an invisible wall protecting the truth. Every clue leads to a dead end like someone wants it that way. Now let's talk about the people Epstein surrounded himself with, because this part of the story is just as revealing as any document or quote. One name that keeps coming up is Ehud Barak, the former Prime Minister of Israel. Epstein's calendars from 2013 to 2017 show Barak visited him around 30 times. Not once, not twice, 30. And this wasn't just casual meetups. These visits happened long after Epstein's first conviction, when the world already knew he was a registered sex offender. What's a former head of state doing hanging out with a convicted predator that often? That's not networking, that's a relationship. And then, of course, there's Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's close partner in crime. Her father, Robert Maxwell, was long rumored to have worked closely with Mossad. Not fringe theory, this guy was buried in Israel with top honors. People in the intelligence world knew his name. And his daughter ends up orchestrating what many describe as a sophisticated, long-term sex trafficking operation for the global elite? That's not some random coincidence. Reporters have tried to chase these connections, but they're always met with denials. When asked, Israeli officials, including former PM Naftali Bennett, called it all slanderous. But calling something slander doesn't make the questions go away. Not when there's travel logs, financial ties, and deep family roots in intelligence circles. It paints a picture. Not a fuzzy one. A very sharp, calculated one. And the deeper you go, the more that picture starts to look less like a wild theory and more like a carefully protected truth. Let's talk about the most disturbing piece of this entire puzzle: how Epstein kept getting away with it for so long in plain sight, and why every time someone got close to the truth, the trail just vanished. Start with the timeline. In 2008, Epstein should have been toast. Dozens of underage girls came forward. The evidence was massive police interviews, testimonies, even physical proof. Yet, instead of going to prison for the rest of his life, he got a 13-month sentence. But get this, he didn't even serve it like a regular inmate. He was allowed to leave the jail 6 days a week on work release, spending most of his time in his mansion. And the deal he signed? It protected not just him, but any possible co-conspirators from prosecution. That wasn't just a legal break, that was surgical protection. Years later, when Acosta was asked why the deal happened, he didn't say lack of evidence or we made a mistake. He said something way stranger. He belonged to intelligence. And when a U.S. attorney is telling a presidential transition team that a known sex trafficker is tied to intelligence and needs to be left alone, you're not talking about normal politics anymore. You're in the world of classified operations and deep state silence. Then there's the client, list the infamous black book people keep talking about. Who was Epstein really trafficking for? Who were the men being blackmailed? We know high-profile names flew on his plane and visited his island. Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, even scientists and tech billionaires. But to this day, that list has never been officially released. Courts claim it's not relevant. The media tiptoes around it. And the few leaks that do make it out, they're quickly buried under fact checks or quietly ignored. Meanwhile, people connected to Epstein keep distancing themselves. Some deny they knew what he was doing. Others say they only met him once or twice. But his calendars, flight logs, and emails say otherwise. These weren't random handshakes at cocktail parties. These were relationships. And somehow, not a single one of these powerful individuals has faced real consequences. Even the footage from inside Epstein's jail cell the night he died conveniently disappeared. First, the guards fell asleep. Then, the cameras malfunctioned. And just like that, the most important witness in one of the biggest scandals in modern history was gone without a trace, without justice, and without answers. What does that tell you? It tells you that this isn't just a story about one man. It's a story about a system built to protect him. A system that shields the elite from the consequences the rest of us would face without question. And when the heat got too high, that system erased him. But the questions he left behind, they're still burning. The craziest part? No one in power seems willing to really investigate this. Not the FBI, not the DOJ, not Congress. Even when victims speak out and journalists start connecting dots, the story always seems to hit a wall. Every door leads to another no comment or that's classified or just plain silence. But let's zoom out and look at the full pattern. You've got legal protection like the sweetheart plea deal in 2008. You've got intelligence-style behavior like blackmail, secret recordings, and powerful friends kept close. You've got victim testimony saying Epstein name-dropped Mossad as a threat. You've got insiders and operatives saying he was running honey traps. And on top of that, you've got money pouring in from mysterious billionaires, unexplained bank accounts, and zero transparency. Then there's the network world leaders, scientists, royalty, media moguls. They didn't just know Epstein, they traveled with him. They stayed at his homes. They partied on his island. He wasn't operating on the fringe, he was dead center in the global elite. So even if no one wants to stamp a file Mossad agent confirmed, the puzzle pieces are everywhere. And when you lay them all out legal cover, intelligence behavior, suspicious wealth, elite ties, it doesn't look like a theory anymore. It looks like a system, a hidden machine powered by secrets and silence where someone like Epstein isn't just protected, he's used. And when he became a liability, he was removed. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.